Good evening and welcome. Before starting tonight's planning committee, I would like to make it clear that item 5 on the agenda, land at Chatham Docks, has been deferred. Good evening everyone and welcome to tonight's planning committee of 8th of May 2024. The first item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Councillor Kemp.
Yes, thank you. I have an apology from Councillor Galvin. I'm substituting for him.
Thank you.
Councillor Nestrov.
Can we just pause, please, while the gallery clears? Thank you.
Councillor Nestrov, Councillor Howcroft-Scott. And Councillor Peake is running a bit late.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Joy.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for Councillor Lamas, and I'm substituting.
Thank you. Are there any more apologies? Right, we now move to item 2 on the agenda to approve the record of the meeting held on 10th of April 2024. Is this approved? We will now move on to item 3 on the agenda, urgent matters by reason of special circumstances. I can confirm that there aren't any late items which do not appear on the main agenda. Item 4, do any members have any disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? Councillor Etheridge.
My usual declaration, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you. I would like to speak as ward councillor on item 6 because myself and colleagues have submitted a representation on this one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that agreed that Councillor Pearce can speak as ward member on item 6? Okay. Right. Councillor Joy?
Item 9, I live quite close to the area where the application is, but I have no dealings with anyone at that location, and it doesn't affect me in any way, so I'll be staying for that item.
Okay, thank you. Any other member? Oh, sorry, over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Chairperson. I know I'm not a member, but I just wanted to declare that in relation to item 6, I live very, very close to the application site, and as a result, I have had no involvement in this application at all.
Okay, thank you. As said at the beginning of the meeting, agenda item 5, planning application for land at Chatham Docks. This item has been deferred. Therefore, we will now move on to item 6 of the agenda. Planning application for Lingley House, Elm Avenue, construction of a 2-storey detached 3-bedroom dwelling. Sam Pilbeam is going to present this application. So over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. So as you said, this application is for subdivision of the existing plot, demolition of the existing garage and erection of a 2-storey detached 3-bedroom property. Just going to get my cursor up here. And you can slightly see the existing garage on that plan there. Of particular note in this application, straight away, is just the location of it. Is this mic registering? Just to be, I'll get a bit closer. Apologies. Thank you. Yep, so as I was saying, a particular reference at the beginning is just to understand the location of the application in relation to the urban area of Chattenden here, forming the very southernmost boundary of Chattenden and coming up to the rural fringe here. Here is Cockham Woods, and adjacent to that we have Hoo Common, which is slightly better illustrated on this aerial photograph here with Lingley House, and then the application site, and here we have the woods. Also of note of this aerial photograph is just some of the long distance vistas. So we have along Elm Avenue here, looking into the site, from Hoo Common, and along this sort of public footpath coming down the application site here. Now, while this area may look open, it's pretty enclosed by this perimeter of tree line, obscuring any long-distance views into the plot from this side here. Now, I've put this slide in just to establish an understanding of the policy background, in particular in relation to the urban area, which I previously mentioned. You can see demarcated by this sort of black line here. And likewise, down to the south, in the green, we have the area of local landscape importance, and this diagonal line, the triple SI. Now, the application site essentially falls into part of the urban area in the sense that the structure itself would be in the urban area, but the remaining site would fall within that, would fall outside the urban area into that local landscape and triple SI. This is pretty similar to the existing relationship with Lingley House, as you can see just in the white here, and this sort of garden area that Lingley House has. This raised quite a few contentions in the first application that was submitted, on the basis that it was refused on balance due to these constraints and the cumulative harm associated with the visual amenity to the area and failure of the proposal to address local ecology and its impacts on the SSI. Since the applicants made numerous material amendments to the proposal in terms of the design, which we'll see later, and likewise has submitted additional ecological reports outlining impacts in terms of bats, newts, reptiles and birds, as well as ecological enhancement measures for the proposal as a whole. These proposals have been addressed by KCC Ecology and Natural England, who've raised no objections on the basis of conditions securing the ecological enhancements and a mitigation plan for the development, i.e. a SEMP, basically just to ensure there's no harm to the triple SI here in terms of noise, dust, light, etc. Notwithstanding, some site photos here, so you can see Lingley House. You can see Lingley House here. And then we've got at the back, we've got this sort of tree line. Here's just a sort of closer view of the application site. You've got the existing garage here and some ornamental trees here, which are proposed to be removed as part of the application. Now, this has been assessed and considered acceptable on the basis that the trees are ornamental and not native to the local landscape area or the triple SI. In addition to that, the applicant's agricultural report has stated they'll replant on a 2-to-1 basis, and this will be natural or native species as well for any loss of these non-native trees. Here's some of the existing garage. As you can see, it's relatively large, detached, no architectural merit in itself, but one thing of note is the application, or the proposal rather, would have a slightly larger footprint than the garage as of current, which we'll see in the upcoming block plans. Here are a few additional photos of some of the trees to be removed, these sort of non-native planted trees. And down here, this is views into the sort of southern garden of the site, where the trees would be retained. This would also be secured with a tree management plan, securing the protection of these trees during the construction works. So looking at the block plans here, this is the previously proposed block plans that were refused. And here we have the proposed block plans. So the main difference outlined in the red circle here is this sort of garage. Now, previously it was felt by officers that this sort of pronounced L shape was good in a sense that it brought Elm Avenue into a sort of more natural close. However, it was quite visually pronounced in the sense that you can see it's pretty close to this footpath here, impacting the openness of this area and the character of the landscape. So since the applicant's taken this on board and omitted the garage here, and likewise proposed additional planting along this border here. So I think this does one of two things. Firstly, you can see sort of this buffer, increased buffer between the application site and the and the footpath. It's sort of encouraging that sort of openness in terms of the plot. And likewise, these trees as well help integrate the proposal from that sort of rural edge, urban edge up here into this sort of more rural framework as well. Here is just some of the previously proposed elevations, as you can see on this sort of bottom one here, the proximity of that garage into the footpath and that character area. And now for the proposed plans, as you can see, it's quite a significant distance now, and I think this has also helped with this sort of stepping away of the hip here, sort of allowing the main body of the dwelling to be introduced into the character of the street scene, rather than appearing relatively abrupt in presence. With this sort of main dwelling itself, you can see it's taken some quite significant visual cues from Lingley House with this flared gable up here, but notwithstanding still remains relatively subservient overall. And here are some photos of the rear. As I said, these views will typically from public vantage points not be very accessible, maybe from the adjoining or the adjacent dwellings to the rear. And then finally we have the floor plans. So you can imagine yourself coming into this hallway with a bedroom on the ground floor, coming into this open plan lounge and kitchen area with access into the rear garden. And then we have access up this central stairway here, again into another bedroom and a master bedroom here with this balcony that would overlook into the applicant's rear garden. So overall, notwithstanding the applicant's location within the countryside and position adjacent to and within an area of local landscape importance and SSSI, alongside the amendments to the footprint of the building, supporting ecological reports, it's considered the application on balance would be acceptable and is therefore recommended for approval.
Thank you, Sam. We now move over to Ward Member Councillor Pearce, who has 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. It'll be very quick, I promise, which you'll probably be happy to hear. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for deferring the application at the last committee meeting so Natural England could be consulted. I'm happy to see also that the Who and Chattenden neighbourhood plan is now part of the appraisal. The main thrust of the ward members' objection was based on ecology, so following the representations made by Natural England and KCC Ecology, along with the set of conditions, the application is acceptable in planning terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I now open the floor to members. Any members? Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. Can I just direct members to page 52 of the report, please? And I'm sure that members have already read all their papers. They don't need me to go reading through all of this, but there are some highlights there I just want to drag out. In terms of the building itself and the change of shape, but in doing so, they've not really done anything with the original outline. It's still exactly the same as before. It is mentioned that it's actually 4.5 metres further away from the trees as previously stated. But viewing the scenes that we've just seen, I don't seem to see that at all. Also, it states very clearly that within the local plan, which I find quite frustrating really, because whenever we challenge anything on the local plan, it's, it's an old one, but we have to abide by it. But here it says the policy for BNE 25 would conflict with the new local plan parts of that MPPF. So I find that quite strange why that's brought into play. It's also acknowledged that, once again, we're looking at countryside restrictive things in BNE 25. And once again, it's referring to a more recent MPPF, when quite often within this committee, we refer back to the original BNE 25 that we have in the local plan from 2003. So once again, there's not consistency. Once again, the weighting given to this application doesn't seem to be contrasts with what the report says, that weighting should be given to the previous applications that have been refused. And I don't see anywhere here where that weighting has changed. Neither do I see, even though it's mentioned regarding the work being taken by the local council to have their development area put into this report. Once again, there's no weighting there at all for this. Once again, we refer back to a 5-year supply, and it says here in one of the last paragraphs, the sustainability of this site. Well, it says quite clearly, the site is within walking distance of Chatham North Spa Convenience Centre. Well, I don't find that very sustainable. And it says for a top-up of everyday goods, which means people have to travel somewhere else, not only for their shopping, but their schools. So it's certainly not sustainable. It says that economically, the site would boost the local economy during construction process, providing jobs in the short term. But we all know here, we're not stupid. The people that build and construct these things are in a white van, man, and they travel all over the country. Most of them are certainly not local. So overall, I can't see where the weighting has changed to actually for the officers to promote this, because to me, it's exactly the same as it was before. The design and impact on the SSSI and Ali is still in situ. So I'm afraid I don't think I can support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. Anyone else? Any other member? No? Okay. So the recommendation is for approval with conditions as laid out in the main agenda. I now move to the Vice Chair. Over to you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move exactly that, agenda item 6 be approved with conditions as laid out in the report.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Those for? Oh,
Councillor Peake, you can't vote, I'm afraid. You can't vote because
So
you came in. Sorry, thank you. 7, Chair.
Those against?
That's 2, Chair.
The application is approved.
What a farce.
Councillor Peake, you need to come back, please.
Is Councillor Peake here, if he can come back?
And East Hill.
Right, thank you. Moving on to item 7, planning application, land at East Hill, Chatham. Hannah Gunner, Principal Planner, is going to present this application. Over to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Outline planning permission was approved in February 2022 at public inquiry for the construction of up to 800 dwellings, a primary school, retail space and GP surgery at East Hill. This application is for phase 1 of the reserve matters and is for 91 residential units in total and is located at the southernmost part of the East Hill site. This aerial photo shows the site in its wider context, where we can see its relation to Capstone Country Park, Lordswood and Walderslade on the west, and then on the other side of the country park we have Hempstead. This plan on the left shows the red line is the full extent of the outline planning application, with phase 1 located at the southern point highlighted in orange, and the plan next to it is the indicative master plan that was considered at the outline stage. Going on to some photographs, we'll see this first photograph here. I've tried to sort of show some arrows here as to where the photos were taken from, just to walk you through the site a bit. So this first picture was taken from the pedestrian footpath access across Scarlet Close, past the crossing island into the public right-of-way that enters the site. That's RC6, I think it is. And the second photo, which we can see up here, is once you come over the brow into the application site, we can see the public right-of-way running down the site here. And on the right-hand side, you'll see this row of vegetation and hedgerow. What I'll point you to is this central row of vegetation that lies through the middle of the site. So that's what's visible here at the top. And then what you can see here is the top of some trees. Those trees form this eastern woodland boundary here. So really this photograph at number 2 just helps to sort of show the slope of the site. And then the third photograph is taken from that woodland edge, and that's looking down the hill eastward towards the Shorested Road junction. So looking again at this central photograph to orientate you, photograph 1 has been taken in what you'll see on the plans, looking from the public right-of-way across what will be the upper street. So this line of trees here is actually the woodland buffer that sits between the application site and North Dane Way. And this hedgerow here is the central hedgerow that I pointed out earlier. Photograph 2, which is down underneath here. So this shows the eastern boundary. So you can see that there's a fence line in place here, and this is the eastern woodland boundary that we see. And then we get to photograph 3. This has been taken from this, the sort of corner where the eastern boundary woodland is, looking up the site, and what this side of this hedgerow is what was known as the lower street in the plans coming forward, and then you can just see what would be the upper street. And then again, photograph 4 shows the lower street aspect of the application site with a hedgerow in place here and the eastern boundary woodland. All of these are taken from the public right-of-way effectively. So photograph 1 in this aspect is taken looking north, and again when we go through the plans you'll see this is the area that is allocated as the open space, the neep and the kick-around area. Photographs 2 and 3 here, just trying to demonstrate the depth of the woodland that sits between North Dane Way, which you can just about see running here, and the application site. So this is the existing access through from the prow. And again, this is taken from where the application site meets that buffer down towards North Dane Way. And then this full photograph, as we go around, has been taken from Shorested Road, and we're looking across an adjacent field, and you can see the eastern boundary woodland here. So the application site and what is classified or called Lower Street would sit the other side of this hedgerow here, or these trees here. So now we're looking at the overall site layout. The key things that I probably want to point out at this juncture is the road layout. So we have the access roundabout that was originally approved as part of the outline application. So you come in through the access roundabout through the main street. What then happens is the street splits, so you get an upper street and a lower street because of the slope of the site. So these streets have actually been built along the contours of the slope, so they're sort of relatively flat. We've got the neep and the play area, attenuation pond up here, and there is also some open space. I'll go through this in a bit more detail once I get into a slightly closer up plan, but we've got an area here which we'll call, it's a cross between a ramp and some steps, so we've sort of called it a stramp throughout the process. But then you've got the play area here, and then you've got the public right-of-way which remains in place crossing the site here. just so that everyone can see this in a bit more detail. So this is the main entrance point into the site. We've got the properties on the entrance point set back with tree planting in front. They've got rear access through this courtyard. The road then comes round, and we have again houses set back off the road with landscape and tree planting. So we've got the tree-lined street here. And then as it comes down into the upper and lower street, we see that Prowl crosses at 2 points. And this public right-of-way remains sloped with no steps in it. So it remains accessible to all sorts of abilities, but what it also now incorporates are these sort of breakout paths, which would lead to sort of seating areas and what have you, just some sort of areas of interest. Just so that you can view, and not to confuse, I've now reorientated the next two streets so that you can see them in a bit more detail. So we look at the upper street here. Obviously these run north to south, but the upper street here we can see the hedgerow planting that's in place. And what we have is semi-detached properties predominantly in this area, with some detached properties. But these semi-detached properties consist of some with garages and parking set back, some with forecourt parking, and then we've got some tree planting going ahead here as well. On the lower street, as you come down or to the lower lane, this is a slightly lower density development, or a part of the development, predominantly detached properties. What you'll see in front of these properties here is that there's a swale running through, which provides a wider landscaped area between the properties and the road. And again, we see that the extent of some of the tree planting. So this next slide just shows the proposed landscape master plan. I've just highlighted some of the aspects to point out. So what we have here is the NEEP play area, which has a variety of play spaces in. I'll go through in detail in a short while. And there's a kickabout area here. This area to the north of the access road is actually the flattest part of the site. So it's been considered to be suitable, A, for that reason, but B, because this becomes a much more accessible space for other residential developments, including additional phases located to the north, but also for existing residents that sit on the other side of North Dane Way. If the play area were deeper within the site, it becomes less accessible to others. And then we've got the attenuation pond or suds pond located within the open space that's to remain to the north of the site. You'll see some woodland planting that sits in adjacent to these properties in this cluster, this eastern cluster. We have additional woodland planting along the Shorested Road area. We have the upper and lower street link, known as the Stramp, as we go through. And again, this public right-of-way area. So just looking at the play space provision in a little more detail. This provides a NEEP, which is a neighbourhood equipped area for play. A NEEP is designed to accommodate older children as well as young children, and is sort of aimed at being accessible to children within a 15-minute walking distance. So, as I've previously said, that does open this up to a much wider number of residents within the area. So this just highlights some of the equipment that is proposed within the NEEP. So we see sort of the children's play equipment, wooden structures, coming down to having a basketball hoop and some sort of skateboarding benches, I think they're called, and some mounds in the kickabout area. So making it a bit more available to some of the older children. Now I'll just turn into some sections. So this top section here shows the NEEP. I think you can just see the line here across here in A. So it shows the NEEP, the attenuation pond down here, and just some of the planting that sits within it. This second application sort of cuts through the courtyard and the eastern cluster, and you can see some of the sort of ground level changes that have been accommodated within the site. And then this section here at the bottom is actually effectively the public right of way. And then we come down to the upper and lower street areas. So this top one here is the northern end, showing the upper lower streets, the hedgerow planting that sits between the two. Number 2 here actually comes through, and this is where the Stramp features as a link for people between the upper and lower streets. And then this third one is the southern end of the site, where the plot narrows slightly, so there's lesser units within the lower aspect. So this is the plan showing the affordable homes provision within the development. It is meeting its 25% requirement. The affordable homes are to be distributed within the upper street and the courtyard cluster at the top. And the applicants have confirmed that at this stage there's already been quite considerable interest from registered providers to the point where there's actually 3 offers on the table. Just had confirmation that obviously they won't be getting into contract until such time as an approval has been sought. Right, I've taken the liberty of taking floor plans out because it's 2, 3, 4 and 5 bed homes, but this is just an example of some of the house types and elevations. What we can see here is that the materials that are being used create some uniformity, whilst the house designs in themselves create the variation. And this top section here shows the affordable homes, and again, this is, you can see from that materials and the design how they actually integrate within the main housing provision. And again, with the materials and design of the sheds, outbuildings and substations, etc., they've all been designed to be in character with the main residential structures. Just some street scene extracts so you can see how the house designs are varied within each of the streets. But we've got a nice break-up with different roof formations, different materials, but at the same time some sort of uniformity and familiarity throughout the development. Just so that you know, this first one here is this line here, which is that sort of eastern cluster as you come in, and then we've got these two are the lower street, and this bottom one here is the upper street. Now just going on to some CGIs. So this CGI of the development is actually the main entrance into the site, so we come in from the roundabout here. These are the properties shown to be set back off the road with the landscaping at the front, and the NEAP access would be here. And then the road comes round and you can see some of the eastern cluster here. This next slide just shows the public right-of-way that cuts through the site, and you can see here the points in which the roads intersect the public right-of-way, and you can also see some of these sort of breakout areas on the prowl. So this CGI shows the lower street. So here we can see this extended landscaping within the front elevations and the landscaping and swales that have been provided as part of that sort of street scene structure. And this is the upper street. So this is taken, or this CGI is effectively looking north. So you have properties here and the Stramp effectively here with the semi-detached properties, which is integration of private owned and affordable homes along this elevation here. Again, the upper street, but this now looks south. So again, you can see the top of the Stramp area here, and then you can see some of the properties that sit and some of the sort of street planting and landscaping that's incorporated within this sort of more dense upper street. And then I'll just, to finish, I'll leave you on that picture of the public right-of-way through. So to conclude, this first phase is considered to be acceptable in terms of design, layout and appearance. And for the reasons set out within the officer's report, the application has been viewed to be acceptable. It is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report and also the additional 2 conditions that are shown on the supplementary report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Hannah. I now open the floor to members. Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. And I'm looking for some clarification and some advice, please. The proposal follows an outline planning permission for the erection of 800 dwellings with a primary school supporting retail space and up to 150 square metres of community or nursery facilities. But most members here, either in the past or recently, have attended a presentation on this site, and we know full well that the developer and the owner does not intend to build a primary school or a retail space for this area. And we also know full well, because he told us quite candidly at that last presentation, if there's nobody comes forward to build that school or that retail space on the land he's going to make available for it, then he's going to withdraw that application in terms of donating that land and build on it again. So to my way of thinking, this application is false because it's not there for a school and houses or anything else. It's for houses only. And therefore, that's why I'm looking for advice on, should this application be reworded to state very clearly, phase one is housing, and with the possibility, and I repeat, possibility of land being allocated sometime in the future that some other developer or other persons would come along to build a school or retail centre on it. But he does not intend to do that at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. Over to you, Dave.
Chairman, thank you very much. This is the first phase of development. There was a master plan that came forward with the original outline application, which showed where the school would be and the retail space would be. They're not within this application site. The description of development quite clearly says this is a reserve matters application for phase one, the construction of 91 residential units, including affordable housing. So that then sets out what this application is for. It then refers to the original outline application and sets out the description of development that was determined by the inspector at appeal. So it's setting out the factual site. So in relation to this application, it was always intended that it would be purely residential, along with the NEEP and the open space that Hannah has set out. It was never to include the school or the retail within this application. That will be a consideration for later proposals, but it's not for consideration tonight.
Okay, Councillor Etheridge.
I'm going to come back because the proposal states very clearly erection of 800 houses with a primary school. And therefore, that proposal is wrong if it's not part of this phase.
Chairman, I can only reiterate what Chairperson, I can only reiterate what I previously said, that that description is what the outline application was for and what was considered by the inspector. So it's a purely factual statement. This application is for phase one and is only for residential. On the master plan with that original application, it was always only shown for residential and not to include the primary school or the secondary or the retail within this site. So that will be a consideration. I understand totally Councillor Etheridge's worries and the concerns about future delivery of a school and retail, but that's not a consideration in front of us here.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Hannah, for the excellent presentation. Now, obviously, I was only been a member of the committee for the last year, so I wasn't around to sit on the committee for the wider outline position for the whole development. But looking just at this development, I'm very concerned about the fact that this development is not going to be sustainable in terms of transport. Looking at the location, you know, they're looking at 2 car parking spaces per property. Because of the lack of public transport here, and I note that there is a description of the local bus network, but it's around a 15-minute walk away, which is probably not best practice. Probably 5 minutes walk away would be best practice, and the only route that passes the edge of it is literally a school bus that goes one direction, so I'm not counting that as a proper bus route. Looking at, obviously, in the outline, what has been passed is around the road infrastructure, but again, that doesn't seem to have adequate walking and cycling facilities we talk about the playground area and about, enabling children from the local area to walk and access that within 15 minutes walk, but I wouldn't let my kids cross North Dane Road. The speeds on there are probably inappropriate, and from the plans that I've seen, I'm not sure it's signalised in terms of pedestrian crossings. So I do have a number of concerns about this site and this part of the development embedding real car dependency, and I would really hope that we have a better attitude towards walking and cycling facilities, but also in terms of access to public transport. And I know Councillor Etheridge's concerns about the shop provision, obviously, that being in a later phase and that being donated, but we have to deal with what's this first phase and the ability, and I note the representations about how this phase isn't sustainable, not close to shops, services or buses within what is a viable walk, particularly in the dark and particularly in winter times. So I'm not sure, in terms of how this application fits in with the wider permissions given, but is there anything that we can, and I've read the Section 106 agreement that has certain triggers on some payments for facilities, but is there anything that we can do within conditions to actually make sure that there is a real proper offer in terms of those people who might not want to use non-car modes to access local services and schools, etc.?
Hannah, you come back on that one?
Yes, certainly. I can pick up a few of those points, and obviously Dave chip in as and when if I miss anything out. So preempting questions on how this site might be linked to the wider area. Obviously, what I will point out to start with is that the sustainability and the travel plan, etc., of this site was considered at the outline application stage, and the inspector has deemed it to be acceptable. However, despite that being the case, we have done some work just to point out where the nearest bus routes and links are and some of the distances. So what we can do, we can see the site here. We can see that the B150 actually runs up North Dane Way. And there's also the 166 and the 169. So the 166 is a bus route that links the Lordswood area to Chatham Town Centre. The 169 again leads the Walderslade area to Chatham Town Centre, and the B150, which runs down North Dane Way, actually links this Princes Park area into Maidstone Town Centre. So whilst I appreciate that the site might not have a bus stop sort of located directly in front of it, there are nearby bus linkages within the locality. Taking that a bit further forward, just to sort of put this in context with some of the local facilities. So existing primary schools on site, or near the site, should I state, we've got this, this is Kingfisher Primary School up here, and we have Maundine School here. Both schools are situated less than 1 kilometre away from phase 1 of East Hill. And then we can see this blue route here, which is actually a pedestrian route through, because there's actually a footpath here, which links to the existing Morrison's Medical Centre and place of worship. All of these are located just off the Princess Road and are actually just shy of an 800-metre walking distance. So that's sort of the current situation in relation to the existing facilities. And then in relation to how that NEAP might sort of link in with sort of outside the site, there is actually 2 pedestrian crossings that are proposed as part of this. One of those pedestrian crossings is north of the roundabout, which will link up to a footpath on the application side of the site, and will link up to the footpath that runs along the side of North Dane Way. There is a second crossing point within the site that links the NEAP to the application site itself, but also to point out that the provision of a roundabout here will substantially slow traffic down as well. There is potential to have that roundabout planted to obscure some of the views, not with trees, but maybe with some hedgerow or shrubbery. which again, if sight lines are obscured, generally that would slow traffic down. And then just to highlight the existing crossing point of we've got on site where the public right of way is, there is a pedestrian island. I appreciate that this isn't the safest of crossings at the moment, but there is long views along North Dane Way. You can see oncoming vehicles from quite a long way. I've crossed the road many, many times, but I appreciate that they're not always the slowest of vehicles up there currently. But hopefully that helps to answer some aspects.
Thank you. Did you want to come back?
Yeah,
Councillor Field?
just on those crossings. Is there any provision that we can do by condition, particularly that one for the public right of access, that looks horrific in terms of speeds? Is there anything that we can do to actually improve that, to make that a more pedestrian, less pedestrian hostile crossing? For instance, maybe raising it, doing something on that. And can you confirm whether those pedestrian crossings across the approved roundabouts are signalised or not for pedestrians?
I can, in terms of the existing crossing where the public right of way is, the section 106 has actually got a contribution because it's outside of the application site, but there is a public right of way contribution which is a sum of 51,000 plus indexation. So very much so that point can be taken with regards to improving that crossing point in order to ensure that that access is retained or made safer. In relation to these crossing points and whether they're signalised, I don't believe that to be the case. I don't know if we've got any leverage on requiring that, but at this moment in time, no, they're not signalised.
Right, thank you. I had Councillor Peake, was it?
Thank you, Chairperson. Just a quick question. Do we have any understanding of the capacity of the medical centre to take on new, do we call us customers, clients? Please, thank you.
Dave, you coming back on that one, or Hannah?
Chairman, thank you. And obviously this is a common question that we're posed with from residents concerned with new development. Not so much that they're against the development, but wanting to make sure that there is a necessary infrastructure. This was an issue which was considered at the appeal of the outline application and would have been covered under the section 106 and a contribution towards health facilities.
Thank you. Peter, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, just to add, I think Dave managed to stall long enough for me to find it in the appeal decision. So it was £522,928 towards the NHS to expand primary and community health services as part of the outline consent. So that's been secured under the outline permission.
Right, Councillor Peake, did you want to come back?
Please, it sounds impressive, but actually I've got no understanding at all about how significant that amount of money is to the challenge potentially involved here, please.
Chairman, I can only go back and say that that was a consideration at the outline application and the appeal. So that matter has been resolved and the inspector was satisfied that with that contribution, the health issue could be satisfactorily addressed. And the health service were as well, because that's what they asked for.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce?
Thank you, Chairperson. In the design and access statement under Landscape Master Plan, it talks about providing nesting and roosting opportunities with bird boxes, swift nesting bricks and bat bricks where appropriate. Unless I'm wrong, I can't find any plans or design plans showing those anywhere, unless I'm wrong. Is it possible to actually condition that as a condition with this application, that those properties have those features? I'm always interested if that's possible. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you very much. There is a condition on the outline approval for exactly that, Chairman. and there's a landscape and ecology mitigation management condition as well. So requirement to provide those details and a requirement to maintain them in the future.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Joy? Oh no, sorry. It's Gilbourne, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously, as another councillor has said, you know, we weren't here when the original application came forward and was rejected and then accepted on appeal. It's just a shame that we're seeing a loss of, you know, green belt on the edge of Capstan Valley. But notwithstanding that, I just wondered from the application as it is presented tonight, just a couple of questions. One is about what do they mean by controlled waters by the Environment Agency on page 66. But also it's about the design of the housing itself. What can the planning committee do other than the officers? What input can we have on the design of the properties themselves? Or are they just presented to planning in that way and we'd like it or lump it sort of thing? Because I'm just interested to know if other designs have been put forward by the developer, which, because just to me they seem a little bit boxy, but I know that's what a lot of new properties are, and whether that mix of semi-detached and detached is right for the area. And I just wonder what the process is in making decisions on that. Thank you.
Chairman, if I can come back on the second part of the question, which is in relation to design. This was quite, as with a lot of applications, there is a lot of pre-application discussion with my officers, and that would include Hannah as the lead officer, but also with the tree officer, with the landscape officer, with the urban design officer, with the sustainable urban drainage officer. And there was a lot of negotiation on this to get the design right. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Gilbourne. This is a sensitive site. It is a greenfield site. The contours of the site and the visual impression of it, when you look from distance into this site, it requires very, very careful consideration on all of those issues. On the landscape and the layout, where the streets go, how they're linked together. So absolutely not. My officers didn't accept straight away what was. It wasn't a take it and or leave it sort of question. There was an extensive negotiations over a considerable period of time. At the presentation to members, I think from recollection, the applicants tried to show how the scheme had changed as a result of those negotiations. In relation to materials, in principle, we're happy with the materials that are being proposed. We've still got to agree the final details of those bricks, and it's not wood. It's fibre cement, which retains its colour. Members will be pleased to hear, and I've got that on my property, so I can confirm that. So whereas, despite the fact that we lost the appeal and we fought it really hard, we're as happy as we can be that with the landscaping proposed, with the type of landscaping and the size of it as that will be planted, and the layout of the roads and the layout of the houses, that this is as good a scheme as it can be for this site. And I'm looking at you for controlled waters. Is that right?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I've just looked it up so that I can get you an accurate definition. So controlled waters are regulated and controlled by the Environment Agency. So it's to do with groundwater or rivers, and it would require discharge permits into controlled waters when you're looking at ground dewatering during construction, etc. So it is something that is between the developer and the Environment Agency.
Thank you. Councillor Field. Oh, no, sorry. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for letting me to come back in. One thing that's immediately obvious to me as well on the pictures is that it's the year 2024, but we still are not seeing solar panels on new properties. And I'd like an explanation of is that going to be a requirement, or is that going to be likely to happen with this application? I know that this might only cover certain detail, this application, but is that something that's been looked at and might be a possibility? Thank you.
Thank you. Dave? Oh.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that up. So in relation to solar panels, yes, solar panels are specified to be incorporated in order to reduce the energy use from the grid during daylight hours. They are part of the sustainability features that are incorporated into the homes. I believe that is something that Taylor Wimpey are incorporating into all new builds currently. Obviously, solar panels is just one of the aspects that's taken into their sustainable build. There is some detail set out in the report within the climate section change of the report. I don't have the page number to hand.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to tidy up a couple of what appear to be loose ends without flogging the issues to death. But I noticed that Kent Police have requested that the developers consult the designing out crime officers. Presumably this will be passed on to the applicant in terms of an informative or what have you. And secondly, talking about passing information on to the applicant, the officer was speculating what leverage might be available to improve the crossings, put traffic lights in, etc. Presumably, some leverage can be exercised by the concerns of members expressed at this meeting, and for those to be passed on to the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hammond-Eshay.
Thank you very much. My colleague, Councillor Field, asked me a profound question a few moments ago. He asked me, this is in relation to these neighbourhood environments for play, the play area, to that effect. And he asked me, would I be happy to let my children cross that road? And I took a look at it, and it's on a bend. I'm thinking, possibly not. So I'm seeking more assurances that, one, that is, in fact, the correct location to have a play area, considering that it's pitched for varying age groups. So I want some more details about how the separation is going to actually look. Also, to consider some more provisions to support that. When you're working or looking after young children, season area for parents. Also, this does tend to lean to a summer-type facility. So when it's raining, when it's winter months, where do the children go to play? So I'll be thinking more about a community centre, somewhere even people can sell ice creams and have other options to engage with. But certainly, the separation, if you look at number 10, 11, and 12, it's just, you're separating teenagers possibly from minors. And I just want to know how that actually works. And just to round it off, ideally, there needs to be a changing area for children to play. So if you've got a sports team, football team, whatever it is, you don't want young people changing in and out, as it were. They need somewhere that's a bit more enclosed. Thank you.
Thank you. Hannah?
Sorry, I'll pick up a couple of points, and if I miss anything, obviously Dave can come in as well. So when looking at place-based provision, am I moving? Oh, you're moving it. I thought I was doing something. So when looking at place-based provision, there's three different types of provision that are incorporated within development. You've got LAPs, LEAPs and NEAPs. Please don't ask me what they all stand for. But a LAP is aimed at very young children. They're sort of very small breakout spaces that are aimed to be within a minute's walk from your home. You then move into a LEAP, which is still aimed at younger children. And they're aimed, but I say younger, not toddlers, sort of the more sort of young school, primary school age. They're actually designed to be within a 5-minute walk of a residential area or within a home. A NEAP is a much wider place-based provision aimed to be within a 15-minute walking distance area. So it does open it up to in the nature of what a NEEP is, it is further away for some children to get to. However, what it does incorporate is a variety of spaces that various age groups can play in. The kickabout space is purely that. It's a kickabout space. It's not meant for games or tournaments or matches. It's not a match pitch. It is for children. It's a flatter area so that children can get out with a ball, as opposed to sitting within the play space area itself. What I did mention in terms of its location is the fact that this has actually been considered, A, at the outline stage, but B, within this detailed stage as well, because we did look at whether or not it could be relocated more within the site. But what that actually then does is makes it a lot less accessible for the other phases within the site and for people from outside of the site. Also, this being the flattest area of the site was much more suitable for that place-based provision. Dave, did you want to add anything?
Chair, Hannah has set it out very, very well. I think the only thing I would add, and this is just learning from experience recently, is that when we negotiate for play space in developments, they are for the residents there, but they should be, what we want is for them to be open for people from outside also to use them. As Councillor Pearce knows from some in your ward, we may have got the location of those in those sites wrong, because they're right heart in the middle of the new development. So the residents of that development then lock the gate and don't allow people from outside to come into it. So the location here not only allows for the occupiers of these 91 houses to use it, as well as people in later phases, but opens up that potential for people from outside to use it, which is our intention, that this should be a public space. Hopefully that's helpful, adding to what Hannah has said.
Can I come back to that?
Yeah, you can come back.
No, thank you very much. Just for my own reassurance, so the wider picture, if I take a look at the full development when it's complete, that NEEP area will probably make more sense. However, if you just still take a look at the way it's situated, is it right that the youngest play area setting is closest to the road? Because that's how it's currently standing. All the numbers from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 around, these are for the younger groups, I'm assuming, and then the larger kick around areas, the skate park and all that, that's more set in. So you've got the youngest catchment area, youngest children playing nearest to the road. And my kids are very adventurous, and they're very you know, when they see a swing, they go for it. So just thinking about that, maybe there's a way that we could shift it slightly or position it in a different way, or put some other traffic calming measures in place to slow down the traffic on that bend, just because I just see on a corner, kids playing, it's an appetite for disaster, really.
Chair, thank you very much. I understand, as someone who's had young kids, I understand absolutely all the issues that Councillor Hammond has said, and they were at the forefront of our mind and our landscape and play officer as well, when we were considering what goes on this site, where it's located within the site. Now, one, the road coming in will only serve those 91 units. So it's not a through road. It's just serving those 91 units. So it's limited use. There is also a crossing which will help to slow traffic down, as well as helping children and adults cross the road. We were trying also to get the balance right between having play facilities which are overlooked, and that's important for the properties which are on the opposite side of the road to look across, so that parents and others can observe and be aware of what's happening, but also having the kickabout areas and the more older age groups further away from those properties, for two reasons. One, because the balls have a habit of being kicked in the wrong direction sometimes. I'm maybe talking from experience there. But so to have that further away to stop that disturbance to people, and that possibility of a ball running on a road and someone, or a young child, or even an older child, is running straight out into the road, and that, which is why that's been located further away. But it's more in terms of that observation, that overlooking, and that's safety for the children, which is absolutely paramount in our mind, as it is, as you've quite rightly said, Councillor Hammond-Dish.
Thank you very much. Just the last point. So are we able to put some considerations in for like seating areas or any sort of provisions so that this becomes an all-season facility? That might include maybe putting a community centre at some point. I know there's mention of a community centre, but it's not actually within the site of the 91 house as well. Because that way, young adults, should I say, I don't want to get myself in trouble, they'll have somewhere to go and do more adult-like activities.
Yeah, I think within the NEEP area itself, there will be some seating provision. I don't really have much more to add, really.
No, Councillor Hammond-Dish, that your concerns are absolutely spot on, and rightly so. I think there will be seating within that, particularly within the young children's area, because that's again important for the safety of the children, that adults and the parents and supervisors can have somewhere to sit while their children are enjoying the equipment. In relation to the community facilities, that's not for this application. That's not included in that, but that could be something for the larger part of the application coming forward. When we're looking maybe at the school, maybe when we're looking at well, definitely when we're looking at the later phases, but not something for this phase. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me come back. Once again, just a point of clarification. We're looking at a play area that's going to eventually support 4 phases of this development, plus children from the opposite side of the road from wherever they live. And yet I find it disappointing there's no public facilities there for any of them. So, you know, if they're desperately needing to go to the loo, or a mother needs to change her baby or something, what happens to them? I think that should also be included within this phase.
So yeah, just to quickly come back on that. Obviously, there is a NEEP included in this application. Within the phases in the northern part of the development, there is an additional NEEP and I think some LEAP spaces as well, which is the sort of aimed at younger children. So yes, this will be accessible to people in other phases, but it won't be the only option. There is other play provision coming forward as part of the wider development.
Right, thank you. Any other member? Councillor Jones.
Sorry to prolong this, Chair, but I think my points sort of got lost somewhere. I asked a question about Kent Police and informative. I also asked a question whether it was, or by implication I asked a question, whether it was possible to put in a condition for a signalised crossing.
Just very quickly on the issue about Kent Police, that has actually been included as an informative. Informatives, however, aren't actually pulled through onto the committee reports, but they are on the decision notice as and when they go out. In relation to the crossing point, I don't know whether, Dave, you've got any thoughts?
Chairman, thank you. I mean, 2 things. One, in terms of the police. Yes, it has been included as informative, or will be included as informative if the application is approved. But it has been something which the applicants have considered through the design process anyway. So there might be some finer details, but a lot of it has already been incorporated. A lot of Secure by Design is within the scheme already. In relation to signalised crossing, I think it was something that was considered at the appeal, so that means of access and those crossings were considered by the inspector at appeal. And obviously, I'm trying to think if it's a he or she, I can't remember now. The fact that and I'm pointing to the roundabout, and you can't see what I'm pointing at, so my apologies. That road design has been designed to slow traffic down. So it's changing the alignment of the road coming into the roundabout, So it's slowing traffic down on there. You've got the crossing points that Hannah's talked about, and you've also got the potential, and this is something that we will deal with, is as Hannah says, is the landscaping on the roundabout. So it reduces visibility, and if you reduce visibility, then traffic will slow down for that, and that's proven. So the inspector, based on that, didn't consider the need for a signalised roundabout. Sorry, that's a long-winded answer, Councillor Jones, but hopefully helpful.
Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me back in. I think for me, in making my consideration about whether I will vote for this application or not, the factor of a signalised crossing is key for me, and the fact that North Dane Ray is a pretty quick road, and we're designing a facility that's across the community, and I appreciate, obviously, that was a consideration in the outline application, but in any way, shape or form that if we could get a signalised crossing, that for me would really help for me to be able to support this application.
I wouldn't particularly advise a signalised crossing in close proximity of that roundabout, because I think that it has the potential to create traffic issues once the crossing is actuated, and the unsignalised arrangement that they have, certainly inside the site, I would consider sufficient.
Councillor Field, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's really about the connectivity between Lordswood and the schools and the shops and the site and the vice versa. It really, for me, feels that that's a missed opportunity and could create some kind of severance, significant community severance, and I do think under our Traffic Management Act, it's expedition movement of people, and that includes non-car modes, and I do think that's important to consider, and yeah, is a key consideration for me.
Chairman, thank you. Sorry, Chairperson. Sorry, I will get it right eventually. My apologies. I completely understand the point that Councillor Field is making, and that's absolutely critical in terms of that connectivity across this road to existing primary schools for the time being, but also the Morrisons and other facilities there in Walderside, and indeed up in Lordswood. So I completely understand the question, the concerns he's got. What we can do is take away that point. There are contributions which go towards improving cycleway connectivity, improving public rights of way, as well as other sustainable issues. We can give some thought to it. I can speak to the highways team about whether we use those contributions towards, or whether it's appropriate to use those contributions towards a signalised junction.
Right, thank you. Was it Councillor Joy? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just going on the comments that have been made, brought up by Councillor Field and the responses, I don't think that putting anything on that roundabout to slow traffic down will actually do the job. If you go further along that road, you go past the Lordshire Leisure Centre, and then slightly beyond there is a sharp right bend with a barrier across the road, and the amount of times that cars have actually collided with other ones because of the speed they're doing, I don't think that anything on there with the people that use that road will make, all they will do is they may slow down on that little bit on that roundabout, but they'll be accelerating away from it, and then you're coming straight to that crossing point, and they're going to be accelerating, which will actually make it more of a hazard, because being hit while a vehicle is accelerating can cause a lot more damage than a vehicle just travelling at a constant speed. So, supporting what Councillor Field says, something needs to be done with that crossing point, because if it's going to be a major point for going to the schools and going to local shops from that development, it's got to be made safer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Oh, Councillor Peake.
Sorry. I apologise up front. I'm finding it difficult to formulate what I want to say. So I'll speak out loud. I have a little bit of a slight concern that when we ask questions and we make comments, the response seems to be, well, the inspectors have looked at this and they're okay with it. I appreciate the fact that we need, on planning, not to be emotive, but look quite coldly for planning concerns purely. However, when we express concerns and ask for considerations to be considered, I'm much happier when we got the last response from you, Dave, is that okay to say that, about the possibility of looking or checking into something like, I think you said you're possibly looking into possibility of road calming measures. I just heard what Councillor Joy has said, so that then throws up the idea that maybe it's not doable, maybe not feasible. So now got to the point where I actually could do with more information. I don't know if that is possible, but I wouldn't mind seeing the report on exactly what and what isn't possible that could be done to try and slow traffic to make sure that these children are safe. Thank you.
Dave, did you want to come back
Yeah,
on that?
Chairperson, thank you very much. And I completely understand all the issues. And I appreciate that Councillor Peake's frustration with the response that this was considered at appeal in allowing the principle of development of this site for 800 houses, let alone 91. But I also completely understand the concerns regarding the speed of traffic on North Dane Way. In terms of this application, the inspector has allowed the roundabout. So the means of access has been agreed. Already at the appeal, the principle of development has been agreed. Now, what we can do, trying to do, is, which links to my previous answers, is make that as safe as it possibly can be in relation to this application. That's looking at the contributions. Looking at the landscaping to try and slow traffic down. We've got the reorientation of the road anyway. It's been diverted into the roundabout rather than going straight as it currently does. The only other thing that maybe the council can consider outside of this application, and indeed again I'm looking at Councillor Pearce, because this is something that he and I have talked about in relation to the A2 to 8 Peninsula Way, is whether there are measures to slow traffic down generally on North Dane Way. That might be average speed cameras, something like that, but that's outside this application. That will be something, because it's an existing issue, as Councillor Joy has said, in terms of the speed of traffic here. So the council could look at other measures it should bring in now to help with the reduce the speed of traffic here. So that's outside of this application. In terms of this application, support everything that Hannah has said in terms of the roundabout, the landscaping, the way it's been designed to try and reduce traffic. And then in addition to that, we can look at how the Section 106 contributions are spent.
Right, thank you. Any other member? No, okay. So thank you, members, for your contributions. I agree with what Councillor Phil said, that a crossing is needed in that area because of the safety for children. So if that can please be looked into, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you. Sadly, this one at appeal, so we have to look at the application put in front of us. I'm happy with the officers' responses that they've given. Therefore, I will be supporting this application. So if I hand over to Vice Chair, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to move approval of agenda item 7, Land at East Hill, Chatham, with conditions as set out in the report, and as added to and amended by the supplementary agenda, and note that the Chief Planning Officer will be having discussions with the Highways Authority about how road safety and crossing facilities can be improved in that area. I move, Chair.
Thank you. The application, sorry, is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Peake. Those, the application is recommended for approval. Those for?
That's 13, Chair.
Okay, thank you. The application is approved. Now we move on to item 8 on the agenda, planning application for the ambulance station at Star Mill Lane, Darland, Chatham. Tom Stubbs, Senior Planner, is going to present this application, so over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening, members. This application is at the ambulance station in Star Mill Lane. This is the site plan. These are the existing commercial buildings used as the ambulance station depot beforehand. This plot here was the previous fire station, which has now been relocated here, and it actually has consent recently approved, which would have a ground floor retail unit and 12 flats, sorry, on there. If we go to the aerial photo, you can see that's where the previous fire station was. So the application site currently consists of a mixture of 1- and 2-storey buildings, and these are photos from Maynard Place. And you can see this is the existing commercial buildings this side, and you've got the 2-storey terraced houses on Star Mill Lane here. This is looking in from to Maynard Place from Star Mill Lane, and again, these are the commercial buildings. And this is looking into Maynard Place. You've got 1 and 2 Maynard Place here, the commercial buildings, and these are the residential garages related to Maynard Place. This is on Star Mill Lane. On this side of the road, you've got the application site and the commercial buildings, and then the existing 2-storey terraces. And this is a photo from Beechwood Avenue, an alleyway, which is the back of the site, and you'll be able to see the development, which would be just here, and that's number 1 Maynard Place here. So this is a site plan again. This is the ambulance station. This is referred to as the ambulance workshop in the plans coming later, and this is 1 and 2 Maynard Place, the existing residential garages. Apologies. And then these are just some existing elevation street scenes. This is along Star Mill Lane. This is the rear of the building along Star Mill Lane. This is the relationship between 1 and 2 Maynard Close and the workshop area, which we referred to earlier. And this is the Maynard Place street scene here. The application site is considered acceptable in principle for residential development in a brownfield site in a residential area. This is the proposal here, which is proposed for 14 dwellings. 5 terrace houses fronting Star Mill Lane here, and then you've got the remaining 9 fronting the car parking area, the court, and there's a relationship to 1 and 2 Maynard Close. Here, parking was a concern in the objections received from residents due to parking pressure, and their original concerns also regarding access, and the original plan had this footpath removed. The plan was amended, re-built this footpath in, and increased the parking provision from 22 spaces to 26. Therefore, due to the sustainable location, the number of parking is considered acceptable due to the relationship to the local neighbourhood centres and access to the public transport on the A2. Members, we noticed that condition 23 has been amended on the supplementary agenda, and that's just to cover the parking provision during the build-out of the development, where it's likely to come in with these buildings being built first, and it's just to ensure that suitable parking is built as that comes forward. So if I go into the proposed street scenes, this is Star Mill Lane. As you come up, this is replacing the commercial buildings and the existing building. And this is the 5 terraces fronting the car park port, so that's this section here. And then you've got the terrace of 4 by 1 Maynard Place, 1 and 2, and that is the rear of those properties and relationships. And then this will be the elevation fronting the former fire station. There's no windows here to protect the amenity of the future residents there. And then this would be the Maynard Place elevation. There's windows on here to provide activation, but no windows on this property here to prevent overlooking of 1 and 2 Maynard Place. As you can see from these plans, I've gone the wrong way, apologies. I think the size and scale is very reflective of the existing 2-storey nature and therefore it's not out of character of the area. These are the layouts, so the terrace of 5 are very similar. So I've only just provided one set of plans there, but the 2-storey with amenity area, kitchen, open kitchen lounge on the ground floor and 3 bedrooms at the on the ground floor and 3 bedrooms at the first floor. Whereas the 4 properties at the near 1 Maynard Place, they're over 3 stories with these appropriate sized dormer to the rear. It has a similar ground floor layout, and there's only 2 bedrooms on the first floor and then the 1 room, the 3rd bedroom in the roof. So to other considerations of the application, regards to contamination, the Environment Agency have requested a set of conditions regarding the impact on controlled waters to protect any contamination during construction, mainly due to the historic uses on the site. The applicant has subsequently written to the Environment Agency about those conditions, and that's why we've asked for delegated powers for those conditions to be amended once we've received the Environment Agency's response. If they do agree and remove or amend those conditions, that will allow us to do so once we've received that advice. The other main consideration, thought of consideration, is with regard to Section 106. The joint viability assessment was undertaken as part of the application process. It was concluded and agreed with the independent advisor that the scheme isn't viable with full Section 106 contributions, but it would be considered viable with £50,000 contributions. Therefore, you'd see from the recommendation that we've had to put the bird mitigation contribution, which is required policy to make this scheme policy compliant, and that leaves just over £43,000 to be split between the other requests, which are all laid out in full in the report. At officer level, we've suggested that it would be best that this go to one lump sum to one of the requests, and we've suggested education. However, if members considered to be otherwise, then there is that list that can be thought of an alternative split. So consequently, subject to the applications considered subject to conditions and that delegated authority to amend the contamination if required, and to the Section 106. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Tom. I now open the floor to members.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the parking, the council's own system says that 31 spaces would be required. Actually knowing that area, we're in Maynard Road, the amount of along the existing opposite the parking bays is actually used by local residents, and along the Star Mill Lane is every morning, every evening is fully parked all the way along that road where there is not double yellow lines. So the requirements that the council set out 31 spaces and them only providing, although it's an increase in what they previously provided, 26, will cause more issues with the parking in that area. I understand that it is close to bus routes and that, but nowadays, even with a bus route nearby, people are still parking, and that's going to consider additional pressures. Is there any way that making sure that making sure that this 26 could potentially be increased? I don't know with regards to looking at the map whether that is a possibility, but there will be no on-street parking, additional on-street parking that being provided on Star Mill Lane or anywhere else in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone want to come back on that or not? No?
Yeah, we've had extensive discussions. We're trying to increase the parking there because it is a significant concern. The applicant has used census data to demonstrate that the level of parking that they are providing is sufficient to meet the requirements of this site, given it is in a relatively accessible location. Obviously, it would be better to be certain that it won't have any off-site impacts, but based on the assessments that they provided, and we have done a lot of work to try and make sure that they have demonstrated this, that the amount of parking provided on the site is sufficient to meet the needs of this site. Obviously, there is the concerns about the existing residents who are using this site that are going to be displaced, but they don't have any legal rights to be using the site for parking as is.
Yeah, you can come back.
Even when the station was in full use, and being on that station quite a number of occasions, when the parking spaces that the residents are currently using were completely filled with staff personnel. The staff personnel were also using the adjacent old fire station land to park their vehicles. So there wasn't, every single parking space that was there was already being used up, and people were still parking opposite that there's a brick wall that runs along, and they were parking next to the brick wall all the way along with the residents parking. So we're actually going back to having these additional developments. There was parking pressures before when it was fully in use as an ambulance station, and actually then removing them is just going to increase that parking pressures. And if vehicles are coming out and people are parked along that brick wall as they previously used to, because the parking bays were at an angle, so they weren't straight on as these parking spaces are. So vehicles coming out of there, if people are parking all along that wall, they're not going to get vehicles in or out. So yes, I understand where you're coming from, saying they won't be able to use them parking spaces there, but the issue was there before when that ambulance station was in full use. And if you go there most days in the morning or in the evening, along Star Mill Lane, where there is not yellow lines, even where there was yellow lines, there was people parked all along there at all hours of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, George, on that?
Yeah, happy to. I can't recall the name of the condition off the top of my head that we've introduced, but they will be introducing a car park management plan to ensure that people are not parking along the site, along that brick wall, so that sort of issue of conflict there will be managed on the site.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just to say I'm very happy with condition 14, which talks about details to be submitted, talking about biodiversity enhancements, particularly habitat boxes for bats and breeding birds. But it mentions in there that these items will be building integrated or made of woodcrete to ensure that they are durable, so they are the proper items, and I would like to see that as standard across the board with all development. I think that would be excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Who do you want to come back on that, Dave? Oh. Okay. Yeah. Right. Any other member? No. Okay. The recommendation is for approval with conditions as laid out in the main agenda and supplementary agenda. I now move to the Vice Chair. Over to you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. So the ambulance station, Star Mill Lane, Darland, Chatham, move approval with conditions as set out in the report, which includes delegated powers to the Chief Planning Officer to amend the conditions once the Environment Agency provide any subsequent response, and also the conditions set out, added to, amended in the supplementary agenda. I move, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. The application is for approval. Those for?
That's 13, Chair.
Thank you. The application is approved. Moving on to item number 9 on the agenda, planning application for 5 Ranscombe Farm Cottages. Dinma Agner is going to present this application. So over to you, Dinma.
Good evening, members. This is the application at number 5 Ranscombe Farm Cottages. The proposal is for the remodelling of the existing dwelling with construction of a 2-storey side and rear extension, redevelopment of the existing porch, improvements to the existing carport with associated landscaping. And to facilitate the works, it would have the demolition of the existing conservatory, pergola, and porch. Now, the site is within the countryside. Next slide. Do I click? Sorry. The site is within the countryside, just west of the M2. It forms part of a small hamlet of detached houses, and it's within the designated country park, the Kent Downs area of outstanding natural beauty, and the metropolitan green belt, as defined in the local plan. Here are some aerial photos showing the existing 2-storey detached dwelling. From this photo, you can see the front porch, which is proposed to be remodeled, the front carport, which is proposed to be redeveloped, and from this picture, you can see the conservatory that's proposed to be demolished, as well as the pergola structure at the rear, which is also proposed to be demolished. From this photo, you can see the same, but a more closer view of the car porch, the front porch, and the conservatory. And from this photo, you can see the rear pergola structure, which is proposed to be demolished, next to the conservatory, which is also proposed to be demolished. And these are the existing and proposed elevations. You can see what's going to happen to the carport. It's very minor change. The front porch also has a significant reduction. You can also see the conservatory, as well as the rear pergola structure, which are proposed to be replaced by a two-story side extension, as well as a 2-story rear extension. And these are the existing and proposed ground floor plans. From these plans, you can see there's a minor increase in footprint. This is from the conservatory. It's approximately 1 meter square addition, which extends towards the front elevation. But pretty much every extension and addition is within the existing footprint. This is the rear photo just showing the current pergola structure, which would be proposed to be replaced with a 2-story rear extension. So whilst this is in the countryside, it is also subject to green belt policies. However, it is considered to be acceptable for the reasons set out in the officer's report, and it is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you, Dinma. I now open the floor to members. Any member? Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, and thank you for your report. I was trying to get back to the item that I highlighted, where there was a request to ensure that in future terms of further extensions, that would be restricted. I'm just trying to find I've got lost now within the page, but basically they're asking for the permitted development rights to be removed. So if that could be included within the conditions, then I'll be more than happy. Thank you.
Peter.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. In terms of the a condition removing permitted development rights, in this case, it wouldn't meet the tests of the condition because it's an application for an extension to an existing property rather than a new property in itself. So we wouldn't be looking to remove permitted development rights for any further extensions. There was, I think there's a bit in the report about earlier iterations of the proposal, which included quite a substantial outbuilding, and there were concerns about future use and future alterations of that outbuilding. We had concerns about that outbuilding and its scale, and as a result, that was withdrawn from the application. So the application before you now is a very scaled down version of the original submission. And I think there were a lot more concerns about future alterations of that detached outbuilding. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. The only issue I've got with this is that it says, and it's also been mentioned by the Parish Council, that the materials being used will not be the Kent peg style tiles on the roof and part weatherboarding that's currently in place. So my view is if that can be a condition, that the materials have to match and they have to present those materials for consideration by officers, then I'm happy to support it. But that's my only sticking point on the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Any other member? Oh, yeah, come over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the change to the roof material, the proposal includes the complete remodelling of the property. So, whilst in terms of the extension, it wouldn't seek to match the existing, because the part of the proposal is to essentially re-roof the whole building to slate, to more sort of change the character of the property, more to essentially the taste of the occupant. Now, obviously, from our point of view, in terms of the planning considerations, we're looking at whether that change causes material harm. And obviously, in this case, while Kent peg tiles are very characteristic of rural areas, so are slates, and therefore we deem that the change in roofing material isn't sufficient to warrant refusal in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? No? Okay. I'm quite happy with this application put in front of us, therefore I will be supporting it. So I move over to Vice Chair, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. I move approval with conditions in relation to 5 Ranscombe Farm, Cottages, Sundridge Hill, Cuxton, Rochester, as set out in the report. Thank you, Chair. I'll now make sure I switch my microphone off.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Those 4. Oh, sorry, apologies. First of all, Councillor Nang, you won't be able to vote on this because you left when the presentation was on. Apologies.
That's 11, Chair.
Those against?
1, Chair.
The application is approved. Now moving on to agenda item 10, the performance report. Over to you, Dave Harris.
Chairman, thank you very much. Members, thank you for this. As you As you know, I report on the performance of this committee and the planning service generally every quarter to this committee. And we feel it's important to continue to do that, and hopefully you find it useful. So first slide here relates to the number of applications received and determined in the last year, 23 to 24. You'll see we are down on previous years. And I think that, and you'll see later slides, reflects that there was a downturn in the market, particularly in the first 6 months of the year. And the reason I emphasize that is because we are penalized if we don't build don't have built a certain number of properties in a year. Some things are within our control, granting planning permission, but we don't build many houses, and whether developers build houses can be determined by the market. So if the economy is not great, they won't build so many houses. They won't build something that they can't sell. And that's the point I'm saying here. We had a reduced number of applications. We can only determine what's in front of us, and we only have a limited impact in terms of what is built. Percentage of major applications determined against performance target, phenomenal. 100% determined within a statutory time period, and 100% determined where they had either planning performance agreement or a planning extension agreement. So we determined them within the time scale agreed by with the applicants. I think that's a really important point there. The government is currently talking about accelerating the planning system. They're talking about determining applications within the statutory time and reducing the use of planning performance agreements and planning extension agreements. With major applications, as members of this committee know, and apologies for telling you stuff that you know, with major applications, they can take longer than the statutory time period of 13 weeks if we're going to get it right, as members know. If we're going to get the Section 106 right, it can take longer than 13 weeks. And in which case, the use of, appropriate use of planning performance agreements and planning extension agreements, this authority, I think, gets right. And I think it would be wrong to penalise councils for taking longer than the statutory time if they're dealing with it in a time period agreed with the applicants and getting the application right, which I think this authority does most of the time, and you do most of the time. Minor applications, 100% where we've used the extension of time, again. In relation to where we haven't used an extension of time, still 91% in time, well above the 70% target. In relation to other applications, where we have used extension of times, 100%. Where they haven't used extension of times, it's still 95% against the target of 70%. The performance by the planning service and members here, I think, is exceptional on all types of applications. This shows in relation to fees through the year, and this is the line for fees through the year. So that's the point I'm making, that the first 6 months of the financial year, we didn't get a lot of applications in, certainly not a lot of big applications in. It picked up in the second 6 months. That had an impact on my budget, but it goes back to that concern I have about the current consultation, which is just closed, on accelerating the planning system and matters which are outside of our control. So planning applications determined within the statutory time period. This is comparing us to other local authorities. You can see we're above the average. Similarly with where it's extensions of time. I think in terms of extension of time, what we need to do is to make sure that we are getting that right. When we're going to applicants and we're saying, can't determine within the statutory period because we want amendments, we want things, we want to improve schemes, we want to get them right. Applicants will often say to us, well, we're only going to allow you a short extension of time. But then they themselves delay getting the relevant information to us, which means it goes out of that time period agreed an extension of time. So we need to be clear to applicants when we're agreeing an extension of time why we're asking the time period that we want, that's needed, and how we need them to enable us to meet that agreed time period. So this is a new document. This is the government dashboard, which is a sort of a draft dashboard, and is showing how we compare to other authorities in the other 13 authorities in Kent. And it's covered in paragraphs 4.22, page 112 of the report. So in terms of applications granted, we're middle there. I don't think we're getting anything wrong. I don't think we're approving too many. I don't think we're refusing too many. But we're about 5th out of 13 authorities. In terms of utilising extension of time, only 2 use less extensions of time than us. That's Tunbridge Wells and Gravesham. So I think we get that right. We don't overuse them. I think there's some authorities who misuse extension of times, and I think that's one of the things that the government is trying to stamp down on, is the misuse of them, and I think we get it right. In terms of major applications in 13 weeks, there's only 2 authorities that do better than us in terms of determining major applications within 13 weeks. But it goes back to the point I was saying earlier. We need to get the decision right, and I think members, you do. We negotiate where we need to get the quality of the development right. In relation to non-major development within 8 weeks, we're 4th on that list, and in terms of household applications within 8 weeks, we're 2nd on the list. So we do determine applications quickly where we can, but we do negotiate where it's necessary, and we refuse. Members refuse where it's necessary as well. This shows the appeals received, pretty consistent over the last quarters there. In terms of appeals allowed and dismissed, we have our own local target. It's not a national target. We have a local target of no more than 30% allowed on appeal, because it tends to highlight that if we're going above that, is there something wrong that we need to be carefully consider? The other thing is that the government can put councils into special measures, and has put councils into special measures, if more than 10% of applications submitted are then allowed on appeal. Now, we're a long way from that. We're around about, I think it's covered in the report, but around about 1% for majors and under that for other applications. But here we have 55% of appeals allowed during the quarter. There were 9 decisions. 3 planning applications were allowed, of which 2 were overturned, one of which related to costs, and I'll come on to that later under the appeals. There were 2 enforcement notices. 1 enforcement notice was quashed, and again, I'll cover that in the appeal report. 1 was part allowed, so we've covered that. It's in real terms, it shows as an allowed appeal, but as you'll see later, the main reason we served the enforcement notice, we won. So I treat that as a win for us rather than an allowed appeal. Prior approvals, not too worried about the larger homes extensions. That doesn't tend to cause us too many problems. Members, you know my concern regarding prior approvals, conversion of buildings to residential without planning permission, without needing planning permission, and the potential issue that brings in terms of not getting Section 106, not being able to ensure the quality is there, and we have written to the government many times on that. Number of units under construction, pretty good. We've worked really hard. Members, you've worked really hard. The committee have worked hard, and the previous committee worked hard to increase the number of houses and properties under construction. And that's important because for 2 reasons. 1, because our housing target, our need, there is over 1,600 dwellings a year we need to deliver. But we are in a housing crisis. Now, members, I'm just going to present you with certain facts here. 37 is the average age of the first-time buyer. There are 624 children homeless in Medway. There are 480 households in temporary accommodation. A new house in Medway is on average 8.7 times the average wage. House prices have increased by 23% in 5 years in Medway, and rented accommodation even more. That's a demonstration of the housing crisis in Medway, in the southeast and in England, that we need to address. This shows in relation to completions in Medway. That's our requirement, and that's what's been delivered. Members, you'll have a report from me probably in July which talks about a housing delivery test, and that relates to our housing delivery compared to our housing need. If we're under 95%, we've got to produce an action plan which says how we are working with the development industry to increase house building in Medway. Now, we've had to do that every year because that target's huge. If we're under 85%, we've got to have a 20% buffer. Don't understand that? If we can't deliver on our housing need, at 1667, how are we going to deliver against 2000? I don't understand that, the penalty against us. And then if we're below 75%, then there is this presumption in favour of sustainable development, almost a double presumption, because there's already a presumption in favour of sustainable development in the MPPF. But it goes back to the point I've said earlier, members, that our control is through granting planning permissions. We do build some properties, but not many. We're still at the mercy of house developers, and we're still at the mercy of the economy as well. This shows our housing completions compared to other authorities in Kent. Shows that we are doing, and this is a point I make to the Secretary of State as well a number of times, we've got an action plan, we're working to the action plan, we're working very hard, we grant planning permissions, developers are building. You will see that in terms of delivery, we are the second best in Kent on that. So, but we're trying to maintain the quality as well. Enforcement notices, 7 enforcement notices is served within the quarter. There are 2 reasons for that. One of the reasons is this young man next to me here, Peter Hockney, now starting with us. And one of the things I tasked him with was trying to get through the enforcement backlog and serve enforcement notices where we can and we should do, to put a real strong marker out to people that do not do development without planning permission. Do not change use of the property without planning permission in Medway, because if it's unacceptable, we will serve an enforcement notice on you. The other thing is that I've got 2 new members of staff who are still relatively new, but working really hard and under Peter's guidance, developing very well. What this shows, though, is the number of new cases we've got and the number of existing cases that we're working through. And Alison Monk, my Senior Enforcement Officer, has been battling through these. Members, I need to ask you to bear with us. I know sometimes you're frustrated, that you want action taken quicker. We're doing the best we can with the resources we can. As I said, we've got Peter, I've got 2 new officers now. Hopefully I'll get a derelict and empty properties officer soon. We're working through this backlog. Members, you have adopted an enforcement policy which sets out a priority. We're working through the cases in a priority order. We're getting to everything, but we have to deal with those ones which are of greatest harm first. When we come to appeals, I'll show you certainly one case, I'm looking at Councillor Gilbourne here, which was, you will see the harm of that case and why we had to give that a priority. TPO applications, yeah, they fall within my team as well. Applications for works to protected trees. And TPO applications determined here. I'm still using a consultant. I'm out to advert for to fill the vacancy of a tree officer. When I get that post filled, hopefully it will enable me to reduce the use of the consultant, and therefore save the council some money there as well. Lead Local Flood Authority, this is phenomenal performance there. Many of you met Gabby, my flood and special projects officer, and you know how fantastic she is, and that performance, which is just part of a job, demonstrates that. Then in relation to complaints, set out on page 131, two-stage process. We received 7 complaints through the quarter. 4 were escalated up to stage 2 because they weren't satisfied with my response. 6 of the complaints have been dismissed. 1 was partially upheld by us, and that was due to a lack of response to an officer who has since left the council. In relation to the Ombudsman looked at 2 decisions and found no fault by us. Members, there are also been a lot of compliments, which are set out on page 132 of the report. And I'll allow you to read those. It's very easy. People are very keen to complain about things, not so necessarily keen to give praise. So to receive compliments just shows the service that they've received from this authority. The one final thing I'll draw members' attention to is that the planning service goes through an ISO assessment in terms of its processes and procedures. We've had 2 in the last 6 months, and both have come up with no non-conformities for the service. So it shows how my staff are following the processes and procedures, understand the reason for them, and that helps us to make the decisions that we do and achieve the targets we do. So members, thank you very much. That's the performance report, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I appreciate all the pressures that yourself and your officers are under, and all of your hard work is very much appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Peake.
Come here. Thank you, Dave, for bringing this report to life. I'm not a great one for grass, I must admit, but on page 110, these stats are so impressive. So that did stand out to me when I read it. Let's just quickly get there. Your percentages there are very impressive. In fact, if they'd been any better, I would have actually been suspicious. It's the same on page, I'm looking at 4.4, 4.5, 4.6. Made applications determined within 13 weeks, 100% compared to 60. I mean, that is phenomenal. Minor applications within 8 weeks, 91% against a 70% target, again astounding. Applications determined within 8 weeks, 95% as opposed to 70%. Really impressive. Likewise on page 122, those stats stood out for me because when you look at how well, especially the one that you highlighted, which was extension of time, because it's a no-brainer really. That's the tricky one where people could cheat and whatever, and how impressive that percentage is as well. And I want to openly say my support for your approach. I had a very bad experience as a lecturer in further education where we chased stats to win the next contract, had absolutely nothing to do with the level of learning or education. It was disgusting. It's one of the reasons why I walked away from teaching, because I've got a conscience. I've got no doubt that these stats are a true reflection of the way things really are and the way they should be. I was particularly pleased to hear you say that there are good reasons why they're not 100%, some of the stats. And I want our stats to be a true reflection of the way it should be, rather than that false chasing to look good for its own sake. You got it the right way round, so thank you for that. Thumbs up, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Peake. Did you want to come in, Councillor Hamdi Shea? Yeah.
Yes, just to lend my support and congratulations to how well your team are doing under such stressful times. You know, the downturn is real, and you're keeping your heads above the parapet and above the water at the same time. So I salute you and your team for that. I just got one question, really, if I could ask for addition to the report, and that is based on the proliferation of these homes being converted into care homes. do you have such stats available, and can we keep a close eye on it to see where the trends are going, and also the locations of some of these care homes, because it's a big issue? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Dave.
Chairman, thank you, and I totally understand the reason for the question, because there has been an awful lot, as you say, in a relatively short time since Ofsted changed the requirement whereby they want to see the fact that planning permission has been granted. We've seen a huge increase in the number of these, Councillor Hamadishi. Yes, I'm very happy to provide that figure. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'm happy to get that figure and email it round to councillors.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Is that okay,
Yep.
Councillor Hamadishi?
Thank you very much. Very useful.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Dave, yeah, I'm very impressed with the stats you've got here. There's one thing that strikes me, and I'm sure the reasons are beyond your control. In your number of units under construction for 2023, you've got 2,061 units. But in the next slide, the number of completions is only 950. Now, I understand there might be a sort of a time delay there, but it's less than half. Is there any particular reason for this?
Chairman, thank you very much. And I'm glad you pointed that out, Councillor Kemp, because it's always something that jumps out at me. I think I always thought that there would be about a 2-year lag on these. So if you look at if you go back to here. So if we're looking at the year 2018-19 on there, and then we go back to 28-19. So it almost that delivery figure is going back 2 years to round about there. So there's almost a 2-year lag. But at the same time, Councillor Kemp, you're absolutely right. The number of construction, even with that 2-year lag, doesn't equate to what's been delivered here. The completion figures are correct. The commencement figures are correct. I'm struggling at the moment to actually explain totally why we don't see the completions of that number, closer to 1,600. I'm not quite sure why that is, but they're the figures that we're given by, because we go around every site, and we're given by the developers. So yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't got a full answer for you on that. Pete's just made a good point there to me. Part of the answer could be where the commencement relates to an apartment block, and therefore delivery is a greater lag there. For instance, Chatham Waters, where we're just seeing the final delivery of a couple of big blocks of flats there.
Any other member? No, I now move over to the Vice Chair, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. I endorse what you have said and what other members have said about the performance of the Planning Department at Medway Council, and I move that we note the performance report as set out.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Those for?
That's 12, Chair.
Okay, thank you. The report is approved. Now moving on to item 11 of the agenda, appeals decisions. Over to you, Dave Harris.
Chair, thank you very much. Members, because we get a lot of appeal decisions, we don't report on all of them to you. The ones that we do choose to report on are either the ones that we've lost, so that we can collectively look at why we've lost them, or the ones where members have made a different decision to officers, and then we can look at that final decision. Did the inspector agree with members? Did he agree with the original, he or she agree with the original recommendation? Was it a balanced case, and so on? So I'm going to report on 5. So that's where the 3 planning applications that were allowed, 2 of which were overturns, and the 2 enforcement notices that I referred to. The first relates to an enforcement notice at Woodlands Hempstead Road, Hempstead. Now this was the one which was part allowed and part dismissed. Application site here, so you get Hempstead Road. In here, we've got a scrap metal yard, we've got an equestrian building, and we've got a mobile home, and then we've got an access road through here. Well, I'll show you some photographs in a minute. The main concern for us related to the scrap metal yard. We were less concerned with the equestrian building, we were less concerned with the mobile home, we were definitely concerned about the access road as well. The inspector allowed the equestrian building and required this area here where the scrap metal is going on to be returned to an equestrian use. Happy with that, it's appropriate for the site. He also said that he was happy for the person living on site to remain living on there. Again, that was a minor part of the enforcement notice, and I'm relaxed about that. He totally agreed with us that the scrap metal use and the road were unacceptable, and he agreed with the enforcement notice on it. This is a scrap metal yard that's there. Members, you can see that that is completely unacceptable. You can see why we served the enforcement notice. You can see why I gave it a high priority and why we've worked really hard to serve this, to serve the enforcement notice, to get it right, working with our legal team, and why we defended very hard at the public inquiry and the appeal, and we won. We've now got to get compliance with the appeal itself, and that's the next battle. I'm not expecting that to be easy. We know this individual, we don't expect him to comply readily. It may well be that he does not comply with the compliance period set by the inspector, and we find ourselves in court in relation to him. I'm hoping not, but that's my feeling, knowing the individual involved. The bits that were allowed related to this building here. This was supposed to be, supposed to be returned to equestrian use, and that's what was previously there. So you can see it was equestrian use and equestrian building. So that's what we want it put back to. So that's that appeal, Chairman. The next one, sorry, Chair. The next one relates to Port Werborough. Some members will be aware, this is a mobile home estate in here. This is a general industrial area through here, and then we got Who Marina through here. And there's some access gates just in there, I think it is. Now, members, there was an approval for a number of mobile homes to be placed on the peninsula down here. The red line covered the access way going out to that peninsula. What the landowner then did, because he couldn't get all the mobile homes he wanted on the peninsula there, is he put 6 on this bit here. So it's outside of the application site. It's within the marina, but outside of the application site, but right next door to a general industrial area where we have no control over noise and time of activities in there. We felt that this was an unacceptable place to put mobile homes, and that it would result in harm to the amenities of the prospective occupiers of the mobile homes here. Unfortunately, the inspector decided that although this site was outside the red line for the mobile homes application, as it still fell within the marina area, and the marina area includes mobile homes, that they didn't require planning permission to put the mobile homes on this site. I don't necessarily agree with that decision. However, we thought about whether we would challenge the inspector's decision. I discussed this with the ward councillors, and I understand their comments to me, which is the mobile homes have been placed here, a number of them have been lived in, and to challenge a decision and put them through further anxiety may be the wrong thing to do. I also discussed it with our legal team, and it's one of those cases where we might not win a judicial review. We might win, but we might not win. And on the basis of that might not, and the ward councillor's comments, which I respect totally, it was felt it was not worth spending public money on a challenge we may not win. So we've accepted the inspector's decision on this. Then we get to the first of the applications, and this related to a site here, Lower Rainham Road. So we've got West Motley Way going up to the Southern Waterworks here. This is Lower Rainham Road through here. Chicane just in this area here. The planning application submitted for 2 houses on there. Members of the previous committee to this one consider the application, whilst they recognise that 2 dwellings could sit comfortably in here, providing your good quality homes, not causing any harm to the amenity of surrounding residents. They were concerned with the access onto the chicane area and whether that would cause highway safety issues. So members, they overturned the recommendation for approval. They refused it. We went to appeal. We tried our best, but the inspector allowed the appeal, but also awarded full costs against the council. And this is why, members, when you're training, when I was talking to you, where you're looking to overturn a recommendation to approve, if it's on something like highway safety or car parking or something like that, which is very technical, I would probably be asking you to defer that application. If you're not happy with the approval, to defer the application so we could do further work, maybe in relation to car parking assessments, or considering the highway safety issue. Is there a history of accidents in this location? What caused them, etc., etc. So if we can find the evidence which would substantiate members' concerns, report that back to you, and based on that information, you can make the decision. The other case would be if myself or the legal officer felt that the overturn you were doing, we didn't feel that there was a valid planning reason to refuse an application. Again, I will be asking for a deferral to enable us to get the necessary council advice. Members, that doesn't happen very often. Most applications are balanced, or a lot of applications are balanced, and where members balance them, set different to officers, there's normally a case that we can put to that. In this instance, we had costs awarded against us. So. The other one was in relation to Avenue Tennis Club. The chair knows this site exceptionally well. I think you probably dream about it, Chair. This 4 units here, 3 units here were allowed on appeal. This was meant to be an amenity area. The applicants came forward again for a further unit on this site for a bungalow, taking out the amenity area. We recommended approval to it. Members of the planning committee felt that it should stay as amenity area and refused the application. It went to appeal and was allowed on appeal, but no costs were awarded in that instance, though. So we were able to make a case where the inspector said, yeah, he could understand that there was a case to be made. He just didn't agree with it, and he allowed the appeal. Final one relates to an officer delegated decision. So this relates to an end of terrace house. So we have Gotham's. This is out in the peninsula. So Gotham's farm is here. This is a peninsula way, roundabout down into Roper's Lane here. New road, the existing road of the old Ratcliffe Highway comes through there. So we got these existing properties in here, and this was to extend the terrace there with a further house, as you see here. Officers went for a refusal based on an additional home in the countryside, and also about its impact. At the time of the application, they hadn't paid their bird contribution. They lodged an appeal. By that time they lodged the appeal, they had paid the bird contribution, so it removed that reason for refusal. and the inspector said there are already 4 other properties in this. An additional unit there would not cause harm to the rural character of the area and allowed the appeal. So they are the 5 appeals, members. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any member? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just quickly, I know these 2 appeals aren't in the report, but because they were successful appeals, but I'm talking about the Lodge Hill, 2 Lodge Hill Lane applications, which the previous committee refused. Officers were recommending refusal. It wasn't actually a unanimous decision, it was a split decision. There were members that didn't agree. But those applications went to appeal and the planning authority won those. So just to say thank you for putting that recommendation forward, which I say thank you, but I think it was the only logical outcome anyway, in planning terms. But yeah, I'd like to just put that on the record because that was really important, those 2 decisions, to protect the Nightingale population at Lodge Hill. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilbourne.
Just want to say thank you to Dave for what he talked about woodlands in Hempstead. As you can see from the photographs, something was growing over there over 6 years, really. And I know the residents of Hempstead are extremely delighted that the council won the appeal and that the enforcement action is going to take place. We know that the applicants, and we know the sort of family that they are, they probably won't want to comply at all. And so the residents just want to make sure that there's proper enforcement done if it needs to go to, as you say, to court, to trial, because it's something that was never wanted. They never applied to any permissions for the scrap metal business and all the associated businesses that have gone on since then. And the residents want to return to equestrian nature. Something that's built on the edge of a semi-rural location, it just isn't appropriate. And I just want to thank Dave for the continued hard work to get that decision made. And I was as ward councillor, we're very delighted, and that we just hope that within the next couple of years that they've gone and returned it to its former condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbourne. Any other member? Okay, so now move over to the Vice Chair, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the committee notes the appeal data presented for the quarter. Thank you.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Those for?
That's 13, Chair.
Right, the report is approved. Thank you. Thank you, officers and members. That is now the end of tonight's Planning Committee meeting.